Hey y'all, it's your girl Charisma Cares, nurse practitioner. So today we are not talking medical. Today we are going to talk about my trip with Qatar. As you all know or may not know, I am Charisma Cares and I travel the world with my son, Cam, who has a disability and special needs. I've never actually talked about a trip before. I think the worst trip we had up to date was probably when Egypt Air broke his wheelchair, multiple dents on multiple flights, and wanted to give me $20 to replace the wheelchair. Yeah, never, ever doing Egypt Air again. But Egypt Air is only good for Egypt. It is probably one of the worst airlines I've ever experienced. When you get to their, when you actually get to their airports, disability service is a joke. Hopefully, you go with another person that can help you because one, either they're not going to care about helping you, or two, you are required to pay them a bribe to help you. And if you do not, you will be badgered. So you're better off just not even dealing with Egypt Airlines. But Egypt Airlines has a reputation of being a horrible airline anyway. And people with disabilities, apparently, you're no exception. The reason why I'm making the video about Qatar is because Qatar is known to be a great airline. We have had great service with them in the past. Never had any real issues worth noting. Maybe not that I can remember, but this go round, going and coming, going dealt with the issues of the whatever that happened in Qatar in June, July, and they changed my flight, and then it gave me the option to cancel. Then after the issue started to die down, then that option to cancel changed to now you have to pay $250 each to cancel for two tickets. So that just became a whole ordeal. But in the end, I decided to jump on the flight. Is that still YouTube complaint worthy? It's annoying, but not YouTube complaint worthy. The flight was great as usual. The food is one of those things you like. You may like it, you may not. You never really know when you're in the inside of an airplane. You don't know. You bring your own snacks just in case. But that flight was the usual Qatar flight. However, on the way back, checking into Atlanta Airport, and I must give you my tidbit. I have flown to numerous destinations, numerous international airports. Aside from Egypt Air and Egyptian airports, Atlanta is, and Egypt Air isn't nice. So Atlanta Airport is the nicest, most ghetto airport you can ever encounter. And I'm saying this as a person that grew up in Atlanta, like from single or early double digits. So I can say this. People think that you can't talk about yourself and others. I can talk about myself and others. Atlanta Airport is the only place that you will be met with Southern ghetto-ness from the second you walk off their airplane. I know this because I've experienced it many, many times, and I have come and grown to expect it. I expect them to yell and degrade the passengers at Atlanta Airport. I expect them to say, "Scurs me," at Atlanta Airport. I expect people to be dressed half naked at Atlanta Airport. I expect the passengers to pretend to be disabled to get a wheelchair at Atlanta Airport so that they don't have to walk the full distance at Atlanta Airport. These are expectations because this is what I have been met with since for a very long time. It wasn't always like this. However, For as long as I can remember in my adult life, this has been Atlanta Airport. So I go to Atlanta Airport to check into my Qatar flight. Mind you, I have a privileged membership and I'm allowed one additional bag or one of my two bags to be overweight. I travel with a lot of medications. I travel with a lot of medical supplies. I also brought items to donate for one or two of the organizations that I support here in Kenya. One is a home for pregnant teenagers and their children. And maybe the parents have put them out, or they're a survivor of incest, or those are typically the cases there. The other one is for domestic violence, rape victims. Most of they start around like age 9 or 10. Some of them have HIV/AIDS. Some of them have children, all from their experiences. And to listen to them speak, you cannot hold back the tears. And so, realizing that this go round, I had an extra bag I could take, or I could have extra weight in my baggage. When I left Kenya, I took three bags, and one was completely empty. The other two were half full. But I also took my carry on and two book bags, as I always do. Okay, so going to the Atlanta airport, I was informed that I could not take my carry on and my two book bags because apparently this time my two book bags were counted as carry on items. This has never been the case. I always travel with the same book bags and the same rolly bags, so I'm not really sure why today was any different. And I explained to them that the rolly bag is full of medication. I take medication for several months with me, for myself and my son. And normally, when I have told an airline this, they normally just say, oh, okay. Or I tell them, I have certain supplies in my bag for my son. They just say, oh, okay. Well, this go round, they basically was like, I don't care. And they were like, well, you can't check the medications and the laptop. And I'm like, okay, but I also have medical supplies. Like everything that's in my carry-on is in my carry-on for a reason. I had a few electronics in my carry-on. They were specifically things that needed to be in my carry-on because one, you're not supposed to check them. Well, that's it. You're just not supposed to check them. You're not supposed to check medications. You're not supposed to check medical supplies that you'll need right away. You're not supposed to check certain electronics. So that's what was in my carry-on. And then they would continue to inform me that I could not do my overweight baggage. Even though that's what it said, but they informed me that at Atlanta Airport, you can't do that. Well, it would be really nice if they inform me online or on the website or somewhere, that I would be able to see it the same way they got me to sign up for the membership. It would be nice had they informed me of this prior to me leaving my house, right? Because with my carry-on, my rolly bag, I knew there was a chance they would say it was too heavy. So I brought an additional bag as a carry-on just in case, and I was going to send it home with my mom if I didn't. However, since they told me my book bags were now considered carry-ons, then that was no longer an option. Um, and this was extremely this was a lot because here I am trying to figure out what to take out of my luggage, um, that isn't important, whether that is medical supplies for my son, medical supplies that I'm bringing for children with needs, or just some basic products. So, like I said, I'm an avid traveler. So I know what the rules are. So I would have never packed a overweight bag if that was the case. I've never done it before because I was not flying priority or privilege, whatever the membership is called. Um, so that was interesting to me. A manager came over because I was being a black woman, I guess, and upset. I said, "Can you speak with my mother?" He informed me that he would cancel my flight because he's not speaking to her, but he didn't like the tone of my voice. So it was very interesting to me that I, a grown woman, am not allowed to choose an agent to speak on my behalf as I'm standing there trying to gather myself, as you basically tell me I'm not allowed to bring medical supplies for my son on this trip, or that my medical supplies are just too heavy for your plane. Now later I'm gonna tell you the plane was empty. The plane was COVID empty. Like all of this, and the plane, like literally, if you've ever been on an international plane, especially Qatar, you will know there's 3 rows of 3 seats. When I tell you the seats all the way across, middle row, left row, empty. The seats in front of me, 1 person. Seats in back of me, 2 people. The seats to the side, maybe 1 person each. Like this flight was empty, empty. So this was wild considering. And so go back to check-in, and I'm basically at this point just breaking down. And he's like, "Well, I can just cancel your flight. It won't make a difference to me. It'll be for you." So I tell him, "Well, fine, cancel the flight. Don't threaten me." Because I'm going to be very honest. I don't take very kindly to threats. Cancel the flight. I was like, I don't think I'm meant to get on this flight. I don't know what may happen. I said, maybe this is God's way of telling me I'm not supposed to get on there. So my mom's like, "No, let me handle it." But of course, he doesn't want to speak to her. So she, because at this point, I'm like, maybe it's not meant for me. Maybe I'm not meant to be in the air right now. Don't let me. There have been plenty of plane crashes where people have said at the last minute something happened and they weren't able to get on the plane. And lately in 2025, plane crashes and plane issues have become a thing of the present. So let me not force myself to do something that I shouldn't be doing, right? So then he decides he'll speak with my mother because I'm like, okay. I'm like, fine, give me my refund, let me go. Like, I'm not gonna force you to make me get on this plane. Like, I'm just not gonna do that. You never have to worry about me forcing you to do something for me. Okay. So he's like, then he changes his, "Well, I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help me decide which medical supplies to take. You're trying to help me decide how to carry my son's medications. Is that what you're trying to help me decide?" So another manager comes by, and I think she just happens to be walking by. I don't think she was called, and it seems like he's her manager. So he basically, and I show her this is the bag of medicines and medical stuff that's in this carry-on. And there's laptops. I'm not sure what you want me to do with this stuff. Like, where do you want me to put it? So she says, "Well, we'll just waive the fee and you can just put some of this stuff in this carry-on bag." And I'm like, that's fine, I guess. Let me see what I can put in there because frankly, most of this stuff is medical. And if you lose my bags, how are you going to replace it? It's not as easy as giving me some money, unless you're shipping this stuff from the US to Kenya, which I know that they're not, right? And this is not commentary, I said, but this is what's going on in my mind. So he put a few items in there because they're like, I can only take 2 bags. So we put a few items in there and we put the rest of the stuff in the book bags. Now, mind you, I have on a back brace, I have back issues. And so guess what? Now I have to carry 2 bags with a bad back. Um, so my son is in his wheelchair. That's the way we came up there, with his crutches in his hand. So we continue on with the process. At this point, it's not a lot of time left. We continue on with the process, and then we put the bag up there, the bag that's heavy, and everybody's gone now. The guy says, "Well, you have to pay $75." I said, "Well, didn't she just say that she was waiving the fees?" "Oh, I don't know anything about that." So he calls the first manager, and they're like, "No, she has to pay." So even though these are medical supplies, I need to still pay. These are the medical supplies that can be checked. I'm like, my mom is starting to get upset. She's no longer cool, calm, and collected. I'm like, you know what? I'll just pay the $75, whatever. Then we get ready to leave, and I notice TSA pre check isn't on there. You've already made me late to get on this flight. TSA pre check isn't on there. So, all this time y'all took to harass me for this last hour. You didn't even buy, you removed, because I know my TSA pre check was put in the system because it was on there when I came, right? But now it's not on there. So he tells me, "Oh, you put it in wrong." No, it was on there. I saw it before I got here because I always check. It's actually part of my profile. So if it's been on here every Qatar flight, then it has to be right, because every Qatar flight it says TSA pre-check. So he goes back to put it in. He has to reprint the boarding pass. Then I say, we do. I mentioned to him in the beginning, like when we're going on medications, my son apparently has a disability. We need wheelchair assistance. It's just me and him going. So he points me over to the wheelchair. They take me through everything. Of course, at TSA, we have to stop because some of the medicines are liquid. And, I don't know if you've traveled with liquid medication. They have to do extra testing on it. Then they, of course, let you go. So then we get on the plane. And I'm trying to get everything because now I got his wheelchair. I got to fold that up. I have two book bags, not my preferred method of setting things up. If you've watched me before, I actually have a very specific setup where I carry a book bag, and then I have a rolly bag with a heavier book bag on it. Y'all, I really have this down to a science. This is why I said I have never had this issue at all with any airline. I've traveled domestically or internationally. Hell, even when I went with Frontier with the rolly bag and the carry bag, I paid for the rolly bag, had the carry bag. They did not even charge me for the carry bag as a carry-on. Okay, so let's be very clear on how often I carry the same. I'm looking for it, but how often I carry the same backpack on every flight. I literally just carried it on a flight to Mexico on Frontier, going and coming. Nothing was said about my book bag, and I paid for my rolly bag. And so we get on the flight. My son goes on first. The flight attendant goes to take him, and he sits him down. So I finally get on the flight, and he's like, "Hey, I don't know why the check-in person put you all the way in the back. This whole row of seats is empty. It's right by the bathroom. It's more convenient for his disability." I tell him, "Thank you so much." In a hurry, I leave my purse, y'all, my new Michael Kors pink purse, bright pink purse. So then the other flight attendant, I leave it right at the gate, right, not where you get on. The flight attendant says, "How are you going to go anywhere without this?" Because you can see my passports on the top. So I was very thankful to those two flight attendants, because they were very amazing. The other flight attendants, but those two, I wish I had remembered their names. They were really, really good. So again, I tell you, we're on this empty plane. Things went fine. I would say I was still having some anxiety after I had broken down at the counter trying to figure out what to take, what to leave. Because it's one thing to say what to take, what to leave when you're pulling out shoes and clothes. But the way that I travel with buckets, and those buckets are zip tied, so I can't open those up. Like I can only really open the suitcases to maneuver. And I have to maneuver out of the one suitcase that's heavy. So it's a whole thing, right? And so it was actually pretty traumatic for me. Because I've not, like I said, I've never had anyone say that. Normally, once they see that it's medical supplies, medications, things like that, they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense," and then we just continue on about our business. It's just a matter of me just showing them and letting them know. I've never had to open and expose all of my son's medical supplies to the whole airport. That's never actually been something I've had to do. So. Then we get to Qatar, and the initial agent, as they had plenty of time to harass me, did not put in wheelchair assistance. Now, if you've never been to Qatar Airport, Qatar is huge, and everything that they do in Qatar is automated. They do not play. They are not Atlanta Airport. Like, I'm just gonna be real. They do not play about their stuff. They are on it. And when we arrived there, we're not in the system. And at this point, I did not realize this. I just knew that it was taking a long time for us to get a wheelchair. So they just sat us in the first class area until the wheelchairs came. First class was very nice, very, very nice. Cam wasn't very happy with it because his braces and his shoe didn't fit in the area. So maybe that's an improvement. I don't know. But it looks like the seat could go back, but I digress. But when we get off and he asks me for my boarding pass, when the wheelchair person finally gets there, asks me for my boarding pass, and he scans it and he says, "You're not in the system." So Qatar, they are on point at that airport. That he said, "That's why it took us so long to get to you. We didn't have you in our system." Like, they assign people. Like, this is not the Atlanta Airport. We just pull up a chair, you get in, and we go. No, this is a whole thing. And at Atlanta Airport, they do scan as well. But maybe we've just never had this experience where the agent did not request wheelchair assistance for the child that's sitting in the wheelchair. After I say we need wheelchair assistance, but I digress. And it was on there when we came because we flew through Qatar Airlines. So it was on there when we came. How it mysteriously was not on there when it's time to go back, again, I don't know. But the problem with this is Qatar is very automated. So when you're in a wheelchair in Qatar, you go from section to section. They don't just pick you up and take you straight to the next place because the airport is so big. So when you get off the plane, you go to the first section, you go through TSA, then they put you on a cart or in a chair and they push you to the next section, and then from that section another car picks you up and takes you to another section. It's like this in Turkey as well. Their airline, they are very much on it, I have to say. They're not like in America. It doesn't seem like we're that involved in the disability wheelchair process in the airports I've been in, but overseas, like, they are on it, right? So when he takes us to our first checkpoint, they're like, "We can't take you any further because you're not in our system. So every time we take you, people are going to stop you, and it's going to be a whole ordeal because basically that's not how they function. They don't function in chaos." So now they have to take the boarding pass that we have, and it has to be taken to the office, and the wheelchair access needs to be put on there, and then it needs to be reprinted and brought back. So this whole process from us getting off the airplane, from the time the airplane landed and everybody left to just getting to TSA probably took about 45 minutes to an hour. Mind you, priority pass, we have lounge time. We should be in a lounge at this point, right? We really shouldn't be going through this situation because had it been put in at the beginning when y'all were harassing me about removing medical supplies, then we wouldn't be here right now. So, but they were very nice about it. They were a little. I think they were annoyed with it not being put it in because obviously he needs a wheelchair. It was kind of like one of those things you see the child with crutches and you're like, what? So they have to go to the office. It takes them a little while. They come back, they bring it back, so then we can continue on with the journey. Um, because he didn't put that in, and I think you have to put in, like, I know when we left Kenya, when we were at the Kenyan airport, our wheelchair person actually took us straight to the priority lounge. This was not the case. We were not offered it, and at this point, I didn't know if we had enough time. I figured it just wasn't on our ticket because even when we left Kenya and we were on Qatar, as priority, you get served first. But I noticed when we left Atlanta to Qatar, that was not the case. We were not served first and we were not given the priority treatment. So there's a lot going on. So we're in Qatar when I learned about the bombing that just happened of a building in Qatar. And my already anxious self that was just on this flight with an hour of turbulence, which normally I don't care about turbulence. But after the guys talking about, I'm going to take you off this flight, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, God, should I be on this flight or should I not be on this flight? Because if I don't need to be on this flight, don't put me on this flight. Me, my luggage, my mom, and my baby can go home. Because, let me not get on this flight. So the turbulence made me very anxious. And I fly all the time. Like in this year alone, we've been to Egypt on multiple flights. I've been to Dubai. Like the year's not even over yet. So this is not like turbulence, baby. I sleep through turbulence, right? But this hour of turbulence, y'all, I was up there boo-hooing. Like I was so afraid. Then we get to Qatar and they're like, there's a bomb. And I'm like, y'all really trying me today. Like y'all are really, really trying my I don't know. Y'all, I just was, that was, that was the most stressful travel experience I have had. And if you all have been following us, you know we've been doing this for around 4 or 5 years now. We have traveled to the Caribbean. We have traveled to Central America, South America, Africa, like so many different places. And this was so traumatic. I will say kudos to the Qatar staff in Kenya. No, in going from Qatar to Kenya. First of all, food was on point. Food was the best food we had had since since this flight, since this whole thing had started. Because on that first leg, Atlanta to Qatar, that food was not edible for me. But this was some good food. Like this was good for Kenyan food too. Like, because I'm not a huge fan of Kenyan food. I'm just a picky eater, y'all. I think that's what it comes down to. But this food was actually like I ate all of my food. They did priority. Now she brought cams and forgot to bring mine, but I was like, whatever. As long as the boy eats, y'all know how Mama Bear is. As long as my kid eats. There was some turbulence and he had to get to the bathroom. They helped me because the turbulence started after we started walking. Then they helped me get him back because they said the turbulence may get worse. They brought him some extra soda so he would feel better. They were just really, really sweet. So kudos. I think the one lady, I wish I knew her name, but she was a Kenyan lady. She was so sweet. If Qatar watches this, she was, I should have included this in the letter because y'all know I wrote a letter to Qatar, right? The power of the pen. But she was a Kenyan lady and she was on our flight from Qatar to Nairobi, and she was the sweetest thing. Hell, she even calmed me because I did not feel anxious on that flight. I think I was more like, thank God we're almost there. Like, because I did not know if the flight was going to leave after finding out there was a bombing in Qatar. I was not sure how that would affect it. And mind you, when I booked the first flight, that flight happened right after the other event in Qatar. Personally, I'm not riding Qatar anymore, especially this year. Um, Even without the issues that happen on the airline, I just am not comfortable going through the Middle East in 2025. There's just way too much going on there. And I feel like I am thankful just to have gotten here in Kenya in one piece, sadly enough. And my plan was to go to West Africa because I don't stay in Kenya very long, honestly. My son stays longer. He's on a student pass and he's in school, but I'll be gone. I'll be here, there, everywhere. And so I was supposed to go to West Africa at the end of the year, but with everything going on, I really don't. I'm not sure I want to get on another flight right this second. What I can say is the people for Qatar Airlines that were good were really good. Unfortunately, the ones that were bad were really bad. There were so many things that were not done. And as I sat on my flight to Kenya, because I paid for the internet, I found out that there were a lot. I started doing some research, and there are a lot of federal laws that they broke, federal laws, regulations. And I want to share them with you because as much as we travel, I did not know these federal laws and regulations. And you may know them. I feel like I did not know them because I've never been questioned. So there was never a need for me to look them up. One, I do know that we are required to have wheelchair access, wheelchair assistance. I am very thankful for the people that made that happen, even after the original agent did not. Number two, medical supplies. This I did not know. Medical supplies and medications do not count against the weight in your luggage. I never knew that at all. I've traveled with crutches. I've traveled with so many medical supplies, nebulizers, and I always put it in my luggage and make sure it's within the weight. Um, I think maybe I've been questioned by one airline because my carry-on was overweight. But once they saw, like once I opened it and they saw the medical stuff, they were like, oh, okay. They said, let me just get my supervisor. The supervisor says, oh, okay, yeah. So I will say I was ignorant to these rules and regulations because none of the airlines knew the rules and regulations. I think that's really what it is. Since they were educated on the rules and regulations, there was never a need for me to know these rules and regulations. They always made sure that they provided it. I know there was one time on a flight with Delta, they did not provide us with wheelchair assistance. And I wrote them a letter and they did remedy that situation. That was a flight getting in late. I think it was Atlanta Airport, but we had to do an emergency landing and then it got in late and there was no one to help us. That was probably, but they did, I wrote them a letter too. Y'all, I will write somebody a letter. And this was before even Chat GPT. So I will write a letter. I have been very good at writing letters. But I want us to know our rights when it comes to disabilities and special needs. And this experience made me realize that I did not know my son's rights. And I need to be better versed in what his rights are because I literally have had a whole suitcase of medical equipment, not realizing that they could not count that in my luggage count. I had no idea. But now that I know, you will never have that problem from me again. I think I may just print out the law and take it with me because this was a very traumatizing situation from beginning to end. So, for those that travel with family members with disabilities and special needs, or for those who have disabilities and special needs, I want to challenge you to look at DOT. Yes, DOT is Department of Transportation. They manage aviation as well. I want you to look at the FAA and see what those guidelines are. I want you to look at the ACAA rules ACAA. And what I'll do is I'll put all of these in here. Now, I'm aware of TSA cares, but again, I've never had issues with TSA. So the one thing when I was doing research on my 4 hour whatever flight from Kenya, one thing I saw on TSA is that disabilities, you not only do you not have to remove shoes and all of that, we know that, but you don't have to remove laptops if you have a disability. I had no idea. And TSA actually has a little card you can print out to remind the TSA agent that they have to abide to that. I don't mind removing the laptops. It is a bit of a hassle, especially when I'm trying to get to my son, because you're not patting my son down without me being near him, right? So, especially when I'm trying to get to him. But what if you're traveling alone and you only have the person pushing your wheelchair? So these are things that really need to be known. So I am going to add the links to and the names to all of these policies so you can easily access it, because I feel like knowledge is power, and I don't feel like I was equipped with enough knowledge. I thought I was knowledgeable, but it's funny how Mama Bear becomes more knowledgeable when you challenge her child. So I hope Qatar, being the airline they are, and my past experiences with them and customer care, that they will reach out. Actually, I'm looking now, and they've already sent an automated message acknowledging the receipt and giving me a case number. So, they're a wonderful airline. They have been. I can't say that this is Qatar. Maybe this is just Qatar at Atlanta Airport. There we have it. If you have any questions, let me know. Tell me about your experiences, and let's make sure that we are writing our letters and we are following up, because it is extremely important that we stand up for disability rights and the rights of those with special needs. They're people just like we are, and they deserve to be able to travel with their medicines, with their equipment, with anything that they need, and you shouldn't be questioned about it. It should not be a hassle. It should not result in a breakdown. It shouldn't be any of this. I know this was pretty long, but I hope it helped somebody. All right, y'all. Ciao.